He slammed his boot down on her back, so hard, the crack echoed like a gunshot through the whole neighborhood. My daughter, 8 years old, was lying face down on the concrete. The chalk drawing she'd been working on, a dinosaur, was smeared beneath her like some broken dream. And through trembling lips, she whispered, "Mommy, I can't move my legs." And the man who did it? He wasn't even a real cop. But what came after that? Even I didn't see it coming. Let me back up, start from the beginning. It was just another slow Saturday. One of those crisp, sunny mornings where the air feels fresh, and the sun hangs lazy over the rooftops. You could hear a lawnmower off in the distance, buzzing like background noise in a movie. My daughter, let's call her Lily, was out on the driveway, crouched over a sidewalk chalk masterpiece. She'd drawn this big purple T-Rex, its mouth stretched into a goofy grin, with stars scattered all around it. She was completely in her own world, humming some nonsense tune. Her little backpack was open beside her, crayons and chalk spilled everywhere like confetti. My wife, Melissa, was out on the porch swing in her robe. She sipped her usual iced tea, the one with lemon and crushed mint, gently rocking back and forth. Every so often she'd glance over at Lily with that soft, proud smile moms have, the kind that says, "Yeah, this is it. This is the good stuff." I was in the kitchen, rinsing out my coffee mug, mentally prepping for a typical Saturday: mow the lawn, fix the leaky hose, maybe clean the grill if I was feeling extra productive. That was supposed to be our whole day. Nothing special. But life? Life doesn't always play fair. Sometimes it throws a punch you never see coming. That's when this weird vehicle pulled up. A white golf cart, of all things, with flashing orange lights strapped to the top and HOA Patrol spray-painted in crooked letters down the side. It screeched to a halt right at the curb like a joke from a bad TV show. Two guys jumped out, both middle-aged, thick-set, wearing tan shirts and cargo pants like they were prepping for a hike or a hostile takeover of suburbia. One had a black cap with HOA on the front, the other clutched a clipboard like it was the Constitution. No badges. No name tags. No sign of any real authority. "Hey," the guy with the hat barked. "What do you think you're doing?" I couldn't see them yet from where I was, still inside, but I heard everything clear through the screen door. Lily looked up, caught off guard. "Just drawing." "On community property," the clipboard guy snapped. "This isn't your driveway, sweetheart." That's when I stepped outside. My stomach dropped. Melissa was already on her feet, her glass shaking in her hand. "Excuse me," she said. "She's just a kid." The guy in the cap waved her off like she was nothing. "Your child is vandalizing HOA-governed sidewalks. That's a Class C violation. Unauthorized markings." "She's 8. Melissa's voice was climbing now. "She should know better," the clipboard guy added, stone cold. "Graffiti is graffiti." That's when I started walking toward them. I didn't run yet. I was still trying to figure out what the hell was going on. I thought maybe this was just some mix-up. Maybe they were bored, playing dress-up with a little too much fake authority. But then, the man in the cap did something I'll never forget. He stepped forward, shouted, "I said get up," and kicked at Lily with his boot. She stumbled onto her side, stunned, crushing her chalk under her elbow. "She's a child," Melissa yelled, rushing toward them. Then it got ugly. The man, face flushed, veins popping across his forehead, pressed his boot right between Lily's shoulder blades and drove her into the ground. The sound, her small body hitting concrete, was louder than it should have been. Her scream tore through the air, high and sharp. Then silence. Just this terrible, heavy silence. And then, "Mommy, I can't move my legs." It all happened in flashes. I don't even remember crossing the yard. I just remember being on him, my fist raised in the air. I tackled him off my daughter, slamming him down hard. My forearm locked across his chest, pinning him to the grass. His breath came out in these wheezing, panicked bursts. Melissa was on the ground, holding Lily close, her cheeks streaked with tears. She kept whispering, "You're okay, you're okay," but deep down, we both knew that wasn't true. There was blood beneath Lily's nose. Her lips trembled. Her fingers twitched slightly. But her legs, they didn't move. "Call 911. Melissa shouted, though it wasn't clear who she was even yelling at. Neighbors began pouring out of their houses. Phones were out, voices loud and scattered. Some gasped, some yelled. One woman rushed over with a first aid kit. Another gently pulled Melissa back, just enough to wrap a blanket over Lily's tiny, shaking body. Meanwhile, the second fake officer, the clipboard guy, started backing away, his words fumbling over each other. "We were just enforcing policy," he stammered. Someone in the crowd yelled, "They're not even real cops. That patch just says HOA." I flipped the guy under me over and grabbed a fistful of his shirt, yanking him up just enough to lock eyes. "You think you're in charge of something?" I growled. "You just shattered my daughter's spine. You get that?" He started to speak, and I slammed my fist into the sidewalk next to his head. "Shut up," I hissed. "You've said enough." His eyes were wide now. He looked around at the circle of neighbors watching, filming, burning holes in him with their stares. I leaned in closer. My voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "You just paralyzed an 8-year-old girl with your boot. And here's the part that might interest you. I'm the warden of Pine Hill Correctional. That's the prison you might be heading to if you're lucky." He blinked at me, not quite processing it. So I added, flat and cold, "Start praying the cops get here before I lose what's left of my composure." Right then I heard the sirens, distant but getting louder. I smiled. The ambulance hadn't even pulled up yet when the first squad car tore into the cul-de-sac. 2 officers stepped out. Green. One had a body cam clipped to his vest. The other wore sunglasses, even though the sky had clouded over and gone dull gray. They scanned the scene. The pinned man beneath me, the crying mother, the still little girl wrapped in a neighbor's blanket. Then, like clockwork, they headed toward me, not him. "Sir, we need you to release him," one of them said. "She can't feel her legs." Melissa screamed. "Do you get what that means?" I didn't move. My knees stayed right where they were, firm on that bastard's chest. "If you touch me before you secure him," I growled at the officer, "I'll have your badge under review before Monday morning." The officer blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm Warden Samuel Parks," I snapped, my voice sharp and loud, cutting through the murmurs like a starting pistol. "Federal clearance. Class if, full federal background. You want to see my credentials? They're in the glove box of that black Ford parked 5 feet behind you." Then I pointed at the man underneath me. "What you won't do is let this man stand after what he did to a child." The second cop hesitated, glancing toward the crowd. They were whispering now, words like spine, boot, video, monster. I looked back down at the man, still beneath me, still breathing my air. "You better enjoy the feel of that grass, buddy," I muttered. "It's the last soft thing you're gonna feel for a long, long time." That's when more sirens arrived, layering over each other like a storm rolling in. The EMTs pulled up fast behind the patrol car. I only let the guy go when 2 medics took over Lily's care. One of them looked her over, then muttered to the other, "Probable spinal trauma. Immediate immobilization." Melissa climbed into the ambulance with them, her hand never leaving Lily's. Her face had gone pale, lips trembling, eyes stuck in that wide, frozen stare people get when their world flips upside down and refuses to flip back. And me? I didn't stand up until I knew they were on their way to the hospital. The guy I had restrained rolled onto his side, coughing hard. I stood over him, casting a shadow across his face. "What's your name?" I asked. He wiped a smear of blood from his lip but didn't say a word. "Oh, you'll tell us eventually," I said, voice flat. "Trust me, prison intake doesn't go easy on people who play the I don't remember game." The other guy, the one with the clipboard, was sitting on the curb now, his wrists locked in cuffs. He looked more like a kid who got caught sneaking cigarettes than someone who just helped ruin a little girl's life. He whimpered, "We were told. The HOA board said we had authority to enforce." "To enforce what?" one of the cops asked, turning toward him. "Homeowners Association," I cut in before he could answer. "Except these guys? They're not part of ours. Not officially. No badges, no documents. And from what I can tell, that HOA board doesn't even exist. They made the whole damn thing up." hijacked a title, used it to push people around, enforced their fake rules with boots and fists. We didn't mean to hurt her, the man with the buzz cut finally blurted. She resisted. She was on the sidewalk and she wouldn't move. She was 8, I snapped, stepping closer. And she was drawing a dinosaur. He looked away. That's when the crowd started pressing in. It wasn't violent yet, but the tension was thick and heavy. People were yelling. Phones were everywhere. "We told the HOA we never voted for these guys," someone shouted. "That's Dave Simmons from the used car lot," another voice yelled. "He's not even on a board." One of the officers called for backup. But they were going to need it. Because this thing? It went way deeper than 2 guys in tan shirts. That much was already clear. I followed the ambulance to Mercy General. Lily was rushed into the trauma unit within 10 minutes. They didn't let us go in with her. Melissa sat just outside the doors, hands clasped tight, head bowed in prayer. And I knew, for a fact, she hadn't prayed in decades. I didn't move. Just sat there, stiff and silent, staring at nothing. Finally, a doctor walked up. His face was that strange mix of calm and concern, the kind they practice in medical school. "She's stable," he began. And that's when Melissa broke. Not just tears, deep, raw, full-body sobs that stopped everyone in the waiting room cold. But the doctor kept going. "There's spinal compression. Vertebral fractures. We're taking her into surgery right now. At the moment, she's showing signs of incomplete paraplegia." "Incomplete?" I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. "There's still some neural response," he said gently. "There's hope, but it's going to be a long road." Melissa squeezed my hand so hard my knuckles cracked. "She'll walk again," I said out loud, barely recognizing the sound of my own voice. "Even if I have to crawl across broken glass through hell to make it happen." Then I stood up. "I need to make a phone call." Within 24 hours, the story was everywhere. First the local outlets, then national news. The footage was impossible to ignore. Lily, face down on the concrete, blood pooled beside her. Her little voice. Her screams. My voice slicing through the noise. "You better pray the cops get here before I do something you'll really regret." That line alone got clipped, shared, and reposted more than 500,000 times by Tuesday. And the so-called Lily? Turns out there wasn't one. Not legally. The subdivision had officially dissolved its board 2 years ago. But a few self-appointed volunteers kept things going. They handed out fake notices, threatened bogus fines, and did sidewalk inspections with clipboards and a whole lot of nerve. It was a scam. A slow, sneaky scam that fed on people's fear. Fear of rules, fear of losing order, fear of stepping out of line. And it all came crashing down the moment a little girl's spine cracked on the pavement. I was sitting in a chair beside Lily's hospital bed when the evening news came on. She was still unconscious from surgery. Melissa had dozed off too, her head resting on the edge of the mattress, hair falling across the sheets like feathers. I scrolled through my phone, inbox overflowing. News reporters, activists, lawyers, even someone from a senator's office. What stopped me cold was a message from an old contact of mine at the state pen, the one who owed me a favor. "You want them at Pine Ridge? Consider it done. Both of them." I closed my eyes. Justice was finally coming home. 3 weeks later, I stood in the Sallyport at Pine Ridge Correctional Facility, clipboard in hand, waiting. "Name?" I asked, as the first inmate stepped through intake, handcuffed, head low. He looked up, buzz cut, pale, thinner than before. Whatever swagger he once had was long gone. "David Allen Kirsty," he mumbled. I stared at him for a long, hard moment. "You assaulted a child. Then pretended to be a cop. Then resisted arrest. Then lied to the press." He opened his mouth to speak. I cut him off. "You remember me?" Swallowed. "This is where you'll serve your time," I said. "And I run it. Welcome to hell." On the morning they were officially indicted, I stood outside the courthouse, arms folded, as the news vans rolled in, like sharks circling blood in the water. 3 felony assault charges. 2 counts of impersonating law enforcement. criminal conspiracy, unlawful detainment of a minor, and the cherry on top? Attempted abduction. And it wasn't just David Kirsty and his clipboard sidekick, Nolan Bryce. No, the investigation opened the floodgates, pulled back the curtain and exposed a whole lineup of shadows behind them. Fake HOA enforcers, bogus violation letters, a fake website, and even an offshore PayPal funnel labeled community fees. They were running a full-blown racketeering ring, right out in the open. And the sickest part? Some neighbors had paid the fines, out of fear. Out of not wanting trouble. We'd all seen those letters, typed in bold red ink, stamped, urgent, a infraction. Most of us tossed them in the trash. But others? Elderly folks. Stressed out young couples. New immigrants still figuring out American housing rules. They paid hundreds of dollars for things like overgrown lawns, a garden gnome too close to the curb, or excessive Halloween lights. It was a slow-motion robbery, dressed up in fake authority. And my daughter? She was the price they paid for escalation. Now the whole world was watching. Back at Pine Ridge, word spread fast. That evening, one of the guards leaned in and whispered, "Warden, some of the guys in Block B? They saw the news. They know those two are here." I paused. Do they know what they did? The guard nodded. They know. Especially Smith. His niece was hit by a drunk driver. She's been in a wheelchair ever since. He saw your daughter's photo in the paper. I didn't even need to respond. I'm not naive enough to think inmates should carry out justice. But I'm also not naive enough to stop karma when it walks through my front gate. What I do control is placement. So no, I didn't assign Kirsty and Bryce to protective custody. They went straight into general population. Just like they treated my daughter, like she was no one. Not fragile. Not special. Just a number to bully and control. Now they were numbers too. Kirsty, inmate 54127. And Bryce? I'm sure it was 54,128. Their prison blues hung off them like borrowed shame. No badges. No clipboards. No fake power. Just two faces the entire country recognized from viral clips titled, "The HOA Attackers." Justice was coming. Real justice. The cops? More like HOA crooks. They broke a little girl's spine. And guess who ended up being their prison warden? Even the late-night shows couldn't resist. Jimmy Fallon aired the footage. So did Colbert. Memes exploded. HOA hell? Homeowners Association? Nah, hell on arrival. One meme showed Kirsty screaming at Lily's chalk drawing, captioned, "Sir, that T-Rex is in violation of Community Regulation 666. It was funny, yeah, but it wasn't just humor fueling the fire. It was rage. And momentum. The trial was brutal. Melissa took the stand. She didn't raise her voice. Melissa just spoke slowly, clearly. Every word landed like a blade, dipped in a mother's grief. She asked the jury if drawing that dinosaur is what made our daughter paralyzed. At one point, that question alone made 3 jurors flinch. I took the stand next. I didn't apologize for tackling Kirsty. I told the truth. I told them about the scare tactics these fake HOA guys used. I named families who'd paid fines out of fear. I walked them through the hours Lily spent after surgery, asking again and again why her legs were still sleeping. Then the prosecution rolled the footage. Mrs. Alvarez's doorbell cam had caught it all, clear as day. Lily lying on the sidewalk. Kirsty's boot lifting. Melissa's scream. And me, charging into frame like a missile. The courtroom went dead silent. Not a cough. Not a whisper. The defense? They didn't stand a chance. They fumbled, tried blaming confusion, miscommunication. Said the force used was unfortunate, but lawful. Called it a tragic mistake during enforcement. But by then both the jury and the rest of the country knew better. This wasn't enforcement. This was costume store fascism. Verdict, guilty. On all counts. Sentence, 23 years, no parole, for David Kirsty. 18 for Nolan Bryce. But it didn't end there. Something happened I didn't see coming. After the verdict, families started coming forward. Dozens of them. Not just from our neighborhood, from all across the county. Turns out, they'd received fake HOA notices too. Some were nearly identical, word for word. This wasn't some isolated case. There were more. Copycats. Opportunists. Like weeds growing through cracks in the sidewalk, they'd spread everywhere. The system had left an opening. So I did what I was trained to do. Within a month, I launched the Civic Integrity Alliance, a watchdog initiative built from scratch. I used my contacts. I leaned on state senators, county board members, retired judges. I even called in a favor from a talk show host I once escorted on a prison reform tour. We created a hotline, gathered reports of fake HOAs, offered free legal help, especially to seniors, and we named names. In the first quarter alone, we exposed 6 phantom HOAs across 3 different states. We shut down a group in Nevada that threatened to evict families over unauthorized bird feeders. We took down a guy in Texas who fined parents because their kids used sidewalk chalk. And every time we won, we used Lily's dinosaur as our symbol. Digitally restored, cleaned up, the big purple T-Rex with its goofy smile and little stars around it became something more than a chalk drawing. It became a symbol of resistance. We printed it on yard signs, on t-shirts, on bumper stickers. This is our sidewalk. Real communities don't need badges. But even with all that, Melissa reminded me it wasn't just about Lily. And Lily? She made sure I didn't forget it. It was 6 months after her second surgery. She was in physical therapy 3 days a week, still on crutches, but gaining strength fast. We were sitting in the living room, same one where she used to tape tracing paper to the coffee table and draw for hours. Now it was filled with support cushions, exercise gear, and a whiteboard listing her goals for the week. I was drained, bitter, angry that she'd lost so much of her childhood. Then she looked up at me. Daddy. Yeah, kiddo. I don't want to hate them forever. That stopped me cold. Why not? Because then they still win. And that broke me. Not with rage. With awe. I still visit those 2 once a month, warden's privilege. Kirsty never meets my eyes. Bryce does, but his stare's empty. Hollow. I don't threaten. I don't gloat. I just sit across the glass, look them both in the face, and say the same thing every single time. She's learning to dance again. Then I stand, walk away, and let the silence do the rest. 6 months later, Lily walked. Not a sprint, not a skip, but a walk, slow, careful, a little shaky. She had 2 braces on her legs, 1 crutch under her arm, and a spirit that refused to listen to spinal cord trauma. She took 5 steps across the therapy room floor. And in that moment, everything stopped. The doctors, the nurses, the therapists. It was like the earth itself hit pause. Melissa broke into tears. I couldn't move. Just stood there, jaw clenched, hands tight, because the sight of it was almost too much to take. Then Lily looked up at us and said, smiling sideways, "That's 1 step for me, and like 1,000 less for them." Of course she remembered. The trial. The cameras. The whispers in the school hallway. She knew exactly what had happened to her. What it meant to be the face of a national movement. But she never let that become her whole story. And she wouldn't let it become mine either. The Civic Integrity Alliance exploded after the verdict. Our hotline averaged 1,000 calls a day. We partnered with federal watchdogs. Built an open database of verified HOAs and known frauds. Local governments started issuing digital HOA certification badges to stop impersonators. Homeowners began organizing real votes, real leadership, and actual oversight. The fake power structures? They started collapsing like termite-infested wood, scattering in the sunlight. And right at the heart of that reckoning? A 3rd-grade chalk drawing of a purple dinosaur. That image became the logo for Project Sidewalk, the nonprofit I launched with Carl, an old cell block counselor I'd worked with back in the day. A guy who once turned gang turf wars into community gardens. In just 6 months, we raised over $500,000. We built sidewalks, designated chalk-safe zones, installed benches in parks where kids could draw without fear, without harassment from wannabe tyrants. And in every one of those spaces, we placed a small metal plaque. A dinosaur. Each one reads, Ellie's Law, your imagination is not a violation. Not everyone was a fan. Some corners of the internet called us soft. He should have broken their legs. He runs a prison, but didn't let the inmates deal with them. Fake justice. But I didn't listen. Because justice isn't revenge. It's restoration. And Lily? She was rebuilding every single day. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a town hall. Me, Melissa, and Lily standing before a crowd of 200 neighbors, city council members, reporters. The mayor had asked us to share the impact of Project Sidewalk. Melissa went first, calm, emotional, steady. Then Lily stood. She walked up to the podium, crutch in hand. Cleared her throat. Hi. I'm Lily. I used to think sidewalks were just for walking. Then I learned they're also for fighting. Laughter. Applause. She smiled. They told me my drawing was vandalism. I think they just didn't understand it. I think maybe they forgot how to imagine. Then she held up a framed version of the original dinosaur, digitally cleaned up, printed on canvas. I want this to hang in City Hall, she said, so nobody forgets what fake power looks like and what real strength is. Standing ovation. Not a dry eye in the room. That video hit 6 million views by the next morning. 2 months later, I got a letter. No return address. No signature. Just one typed line. We should have known who she belonged to. I didn't show it to Melissa or Lily. I folded it, walked out to the fire pit behind the house and dropped it in. Watched it burn to ash. And finally I exhaled. Now, every Saturday Lily and I go for a walk. Same neighborhood. Same sidewalk. We bring chalk, not to protest, not even to remember. Just because we want to. Sometimes she draws a dragon. Sometimes a frog in a spacesuit. Sometimes just a heart with the words, I'm stronger now. And the neighbors? They draw too. Grown adults, some in their 60s, kneeling beside their grandkids, sketching cartoon cats, Bible verses, marine logos, or just the words. Show who. It's our neighborhood again. Not theirs. Never theirs. David Kirsty teaches GED classes in prison now. He asked to be reassigned after 6 months of solitary for disruptive behavior. I approved the transfer. Not because I forgive him. Not because I'm soft. But because I still believe in redemption, for those brave enough to face themselves. He'll never walk free again. But maybe, just maybe, he'll understand the cost of what he took. As for Nolan Bryce, he ended up in the medical wing. There was an incident involving stairs. The report said he tripped. But corrections officers? They don't trip often. When I visited the wing during quarterly inspection, I passed his bed. He looked up. I said nothing. He blinked once. Then looked away. That was enough.